Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students of 8C, I welcome you in this series of e-learning. This is your second lecture for biology, and I am your teacher Muhammad Ilyas. So, today's topic is transport in living organism, and this topic is from your book NLS Science 2, page number 90 to 103, and the chapter number 10. Dear students, we will be able to understand today, inshallah, the concept of transport system in living organisms and its importance. And the second objective for today's learning will be the transport of nutrients and the waste in the flowering plants and the transport of nutrients and waste in humans. So we are going to focus on the transportation. What is transportation and how it is done in plants and animals? Transportation is basically all the living things need oxygen for respiration, the food for energy. Green plants need water and carbon dioxide for photosynthesis. How do these important materials required by living things move into their bodies and to the parts of the organism where they are needed? How do the waste products such as oxygen produced as a result of photosynthesis and the urea travel from where they are produced in the organisms to the parts where they are removed from the body? Dear students, transportation is very important, but it is done very simply in the simple living things like unicellular organisms, amoeba, like the gases in the foods simply diffuses within the body and the surroundings within the surroundings in the body by the means of diffusion. But in the multicellular organisms such as flowering plants and the large animals, the cells in the middle of their body are long away from the body surface, so it is not easily possible for those cells to exchange the materials. And to speed up their transport of the substance to such cells, there is a specialized system, and that system is called the transportation system. This system is present in both in plants and animals. So first of all, we are going to focus on the transport of water. This is a simple description that how water moves into the plant body from the roots. Roots absorb the water from the soil and then move this water towards the stem and then towards the leaves, and from leaves it moves out, and some amount of water is utilized for the photosynthesis, and the rest of it is moved out from the plant body. Another description, the transport of water in the plants. You can see how the water is moving into the roots and moving towards the stem and then to the leaves, and this process of removal of water from the aerial parts of the plant body is called transpiration. This movement is very important. This transportation is very important because it creates a transpirational pull which pushes the water from the soil into the roots and then into the stem and towards the leaves, and in the leaves this water is used for the process of photosynthesis. So transpiration is very important. Now we are going to focus how water is absorbed from the soil into the roots. Root cells have specialized long extension, cytoplasmic extensions. These extensions are called root hair. These root hairs actually increase the surface area for the absorption of water and the minerals. We will see this process in detail by this photograph. You can see that the root hairs are present. These are going to increase the surface area, and the root hairs also have the absorption of water. This is done by the root hairs from the soil. The soil is having the water. The concentration of the water in the soil is greater than this water will move into the root hairs and from root hairs to the root cells. And this is done by the process of osmosis. Osmosis is a process which helps the movement of water from the soil into the root hairs, and then this is moved towards the root cells by diffusion. But the minerals are absorbed firstly by diffusion, but next when their quantities is higher in the root hair cells, then this is by active transport. So root hairs are basically designed by the nature to absorb the maximum quantity of water by the process of osmosis, and minerals by the process of diffusion in early stages, and then by active transport. So after having this understanding of the root hairs, when the water is absorbed in the root hairs, it moves towards the stem, from the roots towards the stem, with the help of a very specialized um, cells, tissues. This is called the xylem, the compound tissues of the plant body. This xylem is having very specialized structure for the transportation of water and minerals, and these xylems are present in the roots, stems, and the leaves. And water, when enters from the root hairs into the root cells, then it is moved towards the xylem, and xylem conduct this water from roots up to the leaves. Beside this, there is another type of tissue in the plants, and that is called the phloem. Phloem helps in the transportation of the prepared food, food which is prepared in the leaves, and these phloem tissues helps to transport the prepared food from leaves to different part of the plants. So these two types of tissues, xylem and phloem, are very useful in the transportation of materials within the plant body, and combinedly these two are called the vascular bundles. The vascular bundles, their position is shown in this diagram. You can see this is the cross section of the stem of a plant. You can see the xylem and phloem where they are located, and here is a microscopic description. As you can see the position of the xylem and the phloem in the plants. These two tissues make the vascular tissues or vascular bundles, which are responsible for the transportation of the materials in the plant body. After having this description, we are moving towards the humans. Humans have very organized circulatory system. We have the organized circulatory system for the transportation of the materials, and this circulatory system comprises of the three main things. One is the heart, second is tubes called the vessels, and the third is the blood. We will inshallah going to study each of these things in detail. First of all, we are going to focus on the structure of the heart. The human heart is actually made up of two pumps side by side, and the right side of the heart pumps blood to the lungs, where carbon dioxide produced by the respiration is removed from the body and oxygen from the air is absorbed into the bloodstream. The left side of the heart pumps oxygenated blood to the rest of the body. The heart has four separate chambers, two on each side. The two smaller upper chambers are called atria, and they are having the thin walls. Blood first flows into the atria. When the atria contract, blood is forced into the lower chambers called ventricles. Ventricles have thick walls filled with the cardiac muscles. When the cardiac muscles in the ventricle contract, they squeeze inward on the blood inside them. This pushes the blood out of the heart. The right ventricle pushes blood to the lungs, and the left ventricle pushes the blood towards the body. And from the lungs, blood comes back to the left atrium, and then left atrium to left ventricle, and left ventricle to body. And beside these four chambers, there are two valves in the heart. These valves present between the atrium and ventricle on both sides. There is a wall between right atrium and right ventricle, and left atrium and left ventricle. The function of the wall. Dear students, the walls are specifically designed by the nature to allow the one-way flow of the blood. When the atrium contracts, the bloods move into the ventricle. But when the ventricle contracts, the blood is not allowed to move back to the atrium. This is how valves help in the one-way flow of the blood. This is very important function done by the valves. Next we are moving towards the blood vessels. There are three types of blood vessels in our body. The one is the artery, second is the vein, and third is the capillary. What is the function? We will discuss in detail. Arteries always carries the blood away from the heart. Veins carries the blood towards the heart, and capillaries are specifically designed for the exchange of material. Exchange of material between the blood and the tissues. Now we are going to see it in detail. You can see the artery is carrying the blood from the heart, and on the way it is divided into smaller branches, and eventually it is divided into capillaries. Capillaries are very thin, just one cell thick vessels, and from these capillaries the exchange of material is done between the tissues and the blood. For example, from the blood the oxygen, the food and the water is moved towards the tissues, and from the tissues the carbon dioxide and the urea, the other waste products, the excessive water is moved back towards the blood through the capillaries. So you can see from here, from this diagram, the nutrients are moving towards the tissues, and from the tissues the waste products are moving towards the capillaries. So this is the very important function of the capillaries. And then the blood, after carrying these waste products, move towards the heart for the purpose of purification. You can see the difference in the structure of the artery and vein. Arteries are having more thicker inner muscles than the veins, because the blood which is flowing in the arteries carries more pressure from the heart. That's why their muscles are more elastic, so that they can absorb, they can tolerate the blood pressure coming from the heart. After having this understanding, we are moving towards the very important tissues of the blood circulatory system, and that is blood. It is comprising of three types of cells and one very important liquid fluid, that is plasma. Plasma is basically the fluid which is present in the blood, and it helps in carrying the blood cells. It is a pale yellow liquid in the blood, and there are three types of the blood cells in the blood, that is red blood cells, white blood cells, and the platelets. So red blood cells are basically having a very important protein, that is hemoglobin. This protein is basically designed to carry the oxygen from the lungs to different parts of the body. Hemoglobin combines with the oxygen, form the oxyhemoglobin, and carries the blood oxygen in this way to different parts of the body. White blood cells are designed to defend our body, while the platelets, they are basically not the cells, these are the fragments of the some specialized cells in the bone marrow, which are present in the bone marrow, and the platelets are very helpful for the clotting of the blood. They heal up our wounds. When we got some injuries, the platelets helps to heal up the wound. And I told you that the white blood cells are responsible for the defense of our body. Now we are moving towards the blood circulation. This is very important point, that how this is done. So whole complete circulation of the blood. You can see in the blue tubes, in the blue vessels, which are basically the veins, they are carrying the blood towards the heart, and the one vein, which is pulmonary vein, carries the blood towards the lungs. After purification from the lungs, this is coming back towards the heart, and from the heart, this oxygenated, shown in this diagram as a red color, this moves towards the tissues of all the body parts, from head to toe. You can see this is how the blood is moving from heart to the tissues, to different parts of the body, and supplying them the different nutrients, oxygen in the food, and then getting the waste materials coming back towards the heart, and then it is moving towards the lungs for purification and other parts for the removal of the waste materials. This is how the blood circulation is done, my dear students. So after having this understanding, now I am very confident here you have the complete understanding of the transportation system in the plants and the human bodies. So I have specially designed a homework for you uh, from the chapter number 10. Review questions from 1 to 5. These review questions are placed on the page number 102. Please do their homework and send within the time limits in your group. Thank you very much for understanding being with me. Allah Hafiz.